Hello, this is Dave, and this is the second part of the JC Exposed video. I made the mistake of actually saying the name of this idol, where it says in Exodus 23:13, "And in all things that I have said unto you, be circumspect, and make no mention of the name of other gods, neither let it be heard out of thy mouth." So I will not be using the name, but JC, or the New Testament Messiah instead. Now, there are a vague number of supposed prophecies of JC. Some say 300, others say 400, and all sorts of numbers in between. Now, I personally believe that the uncertainty is deliberate. It means that if one of these prophecies is conclusively disproved, then it can be claimed not to be one of the main prophecies. So I'm going to take a look at the so-called prophecies that keep cropping up whenever a Christian tells me that JC was spoken of in the Book of Remembrance. Namely, Isaiah 7:14, Isaiah 9:6, Isaiah 53, Proverbs 8:23, Micah 5:2, Psalms 22, Psalms 110:1, and Daniel 9:25. These so-called prophecies all seem to follow the same pattern. They are isolated verses, or in some cases partial verses, that are meant to be read as standalone statements, which sound all prophetic and New Testament Messiah-like, but somehow they're assuming that the prophets, while speaking about contemporaneous events, suddenly switch in mid-sentence to saying a few words about a character in the far future, and then immediately go back to the events at hand, which is kind of ridiculous really, isn't it? But if you were to take the heretical step of actually reading these verses in context, then it's obvious that they're not prophecies of a New Testament Messiah at all. Whereupon the determined Christian will fall back to saying that it's some kind of dual prophecy, something that isn't supported by Scripture or even mentioned anywhere in the Book of Remembrance. And it bears repeating that if the JC story was real, then it would be the most amazing event in the history of history. The Most High Creator of all things, incarnating on earth in the flesh. There can be nothing more important than that. So why does the Book of Remembrance, a book that covers the last phase of earth's history, beginning at Adam, right through to the last days, why is this book not aware of this event? Especially when the Most High promises that he'd reveal such things to us. Amos 3:7. "Surely the Most High will do nothing, but he revealeth his secret unto his servants the prophets." The Book of Enoch also contains a complete record of events, with animals representing the various characters and people in those events. However, the New Testament Messiah is not represented at all. So according to the Book of Remembrance and the Book of Enoch, JC never existed, and there is no such entity as a New Testament Messiah. So let's take a close look at the supporting evidence that he did exist. So we're going to start by looking at Matthew chapter 1 verses 21 to 23. "And she shall bring forth a son, and thou shalt call his name JC, for he shall save his people from their sins. Now all this was done, that it might be fulfilled, which was spoken of the Lord by the prophet, saying, Behold, a virgin shall be with child, and shall bring forth a son, and they shall call his name Emmanuel, which being interpreted is God with us." So Matthew is referencing Isaiah 7:14, but right away there is a contradiction. In Matthew chapter 1 verse 21, an angel says in a dream that he shall be called JC. But then in verse 23, the Most High says that he'll be called Emmanuel. But we'll come back to that. Isaiah chapter 7 verse 14. "Therefore the Most High himself shall give you a sign. Behold, a virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and shall call his name Emmanuel." So this is an example of taking a verse in isolation and making claims upon it, just because it sounds right. In order to verify the claim, that it is a prophecy of the New Testament Messiah, we have to look at the verses before and after to find out the context. Isaiah chapter 7 verse 1. And it came to pass in the days of Ahaz, the son of Jotham, the son of Uzziah, king of Judah, that Rezin, king of Syria, and Pekah, the son of Remaliah, king of Israel, went up to Jerusalem to war against it, but could not prevail against it. So this occurred while Ahaz was the king of Judah, and he was attacked by the northern kingdom and Syria. Ahaz repelled the attack, but was worried that they should attack again. But the Creator told him that they would not. Isaiah chapter 7 verse 7. Thus saith the Most High, it shall not stand, neither shall it come to pass. The Creator told Ahaz to ask for a sign so that he would be reassured that he wouldn't be attacked. Not anything to do with JC hundreds of years later. Isaiah chapter 7 verses 10 and 11. Moreover, the Most High spoke again to Ahaz, saying, ask thee a sign of the Most High your power. Ask it either in the depth or in the height above. So Ahaz refused because he didn't want to tempt the Most High. So the Creator said he'd give him a sign anyway. Isaiah chapter 7 verse 14. Therefore the Most High himself shall give you a sign. Behold, a virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and shall call his name Emmanuel. In the Hebrew, the word for virgin is Alma. That's H5959. And it means young woman of marriageable age. But when it was translated into Greek in Matthew 1:26, it was translated as Parthenos, which actually means virgin. In Hebrew, the word Bethulah, that's H1330, that's the word that means virgin. Please note that JC was never called Emmanuel or God with us. But the prophecy continues. Isaiah chapter 7 verses 15 and 16. Butter and honey shall he eat, that he may know to refuse the evil and choose the good. For before the child shall know to refuse the evil and choose the good, the land that thou abhorrest shall be forsaken of both her kings. Nowhere in the New Testament does it say that JC ate butter and honey. But it does say that before this child gets too old, the kings that Ahaz fears will be no more. The next verses describe what the Most High does to the land to create an abundance of butter and honey in the days of Ahaz. Isaiah chapter 7 verse 18. And it shall come to pass in that day that the Most High shall hiss for the fly that is in the uttermost part of the rivers of Egypt, and for the bee that is in the land of Assyria. And Isaiah chapter 7 verses 21 and 22. And it shall come to pass in that day that a man shall nourish a young cow and 2 sheep, and it shall come to pass for the abundance of milk that they shall give, he shall eat butter, for butter and honey shall everyone eat that is left in the land. So because of what the Most High did to the land, there was an abundance of butter and honey that everyone ate, including the child. So Isaiah chapter 7 verses 15 to 16 is a timeline marker that gave Ahaz an indication of when the prophecy will be fulfilled. So first the king of Assyria is killed. That's 2 Kings chapter 15 verse 30. And Hoshea son of Elah made a conspiracy against Pekah the son of Remaliah, and smote him and slew him, and reigned in his stead in the 20th year of Jotham son of Uzziah. And then the northern kingdom. Isaiah chapter 9 verses 11 and 12. Therefore the Most High shall set up the adversaries of Rezin against him, and join his enemies together, the Syrians before and the Philistines behind. And they shall devour Israel with open mouth. For all this his anger is not turned away, but his hand is stretched out still. 2 Kings chapter 16 verse 9. And the king of Assyria hearkened unto him, For the king of Assyria went up against Damascus, and took it, and carried the people of it captive to Kir, and slew Rezin. Prophecy fulfilled. And the days of Ahaz, which is the historical context for all these events, end hundreds of years before JC. Isaiah chapter 14 verse 28. In that year that King Ahaz died with his burden. He actually died in 728 BC. In Isaiah chapter 8 verse 18, it says that Isaiah's children would be for prophetic signs. Isaiah chapter 8 verse 18. Behold, I and the children whom the Most High hath given me are for signs and for wonders in Israel, from the Lord of hosts, which dwelleth in Mount Zion. So Isaiah had 3 sons. Shear-Jeshub means a remnant will return. Emmanuel means God is with us. Maher-Shalal-Hashbaz means the spoil speeds, the prey hastes, all of which were used as prophetic signs. Emmanuel's name was to be a sign that within a year or so, Assyria will come and plunder both Israel and Syria. And sure enough, in 2 Kings chapter 15:27, it tells that Pekah reigned for 20 years. And in 2 Kings chapter 16 verse 1, Ahaz became king in Pekah's 17th year. So the prophecy occurred within a 3-year window. 2 Kings chapter 15:27, in the 52nd year of Azariah king of Judah, Pekah the son of Remaliah began to reign over Israel in Samaria, and reigned 20 years. 2 Kings chapter 16 verse 1. In the 17th year of Pekah the son of Remaliah, Ahaz the son of Jotham, king of Judah, began to reign. So it's really narrowing down exactly where that prophecy was fulfilled. So Matthew was being very deceptive. In Isaiah, it says that the boy's mother will call his name Emmanuel. But Matthew changes it to an unnamed they, who shall call his name Emmanuel. However, nowhere in the New Testament does anyone ever call him Emmanuel, or give him the title God with us. The Most High does not lie, nor does he change. So if Isaiah chapter 7 verse 14 is a prophecy of the New Testament Messiah, then the Most High commanded that his name shall be Emmanuel. So why then is he not named Emmanuel? So you've got to ask, did the Most High lie, or did he change his mind? So move on to Isaiah chapter 9 verse 6. For unto us a child is born, unto us a son is given, and the government shall be upon his shoulder, and his name shall be called Wonderful, Counselor, the Mighty God, the Everlasting Father, the Prince of Peace. The word is denotes present tense, not future. And the word us is referring to the people of Judah, including Isaiah himself. So Isaiah was speaking of an event that occurred, once again, in the days of Ahaz. And that is from Isaiah chapter 7 verse 1 to chapter 14 verse 28. And what a surprise. King Ahaz had a son, Hezekiah, whose name means Mighty God. And the government did fall upon his shoulders when he later became King Hezekiah, and peace reigned in his days. And the chapters in Isaiah after King Ahaz dies are about King Hezekiah. JC was never called Wonderful or Counselor or the Mighty God or the Everlasting Father or the Prince of Peace. In fact, in Matthew chapter 10 verse 34, JC actually says that he's not the Prince of Peace. Matthew chapter 10 verse 34. Think not that I am come to send peace on the earth. I came not to send peace, but a sword. It is not the case that Isaiah is speaking about Ahaz and Hezekiah in these chapters, and then suddenly without warning says a few words about a New Testament Messiah 700 years in the future, and then just as suddenly goes back to speaking about Ahaz and Hezekiah. This is another lie about Isaiah prophesying JC. Now let's look at Isaiah chapter 53 verse 2. Now Christians point to Isaiah 53 and say, look, it's JC who was despised, bruised and wounded. But was it? We can look at Isaiah chapter 49 verse 7. Thus saith the Most High, the Redeemer of Israel and his Holy One, to him whom man despiseth, to him the nations abhorreth, to a servant of rulers, kings shall see and arise, princes shall also worship, because of the Most High that is faithful. So is it only JC who is bruised and wounded? Well, in Jeremiah chapter 30 verse 10 it says, Therefore fear thou not, O my servant Jacob, saith the Most High, neither be dismayed, O Israel, for lo, I will save thee from afar, and thy seed from the land of their captivity. And Jacob shall return and be in rest, and be quiet, and none shall make him afraid. Jeremiah chapter 30 verse 12. For thus saith the Most High, Thy bruise is incurable, and thy wound is grievous. So there it's still talking about Israel. Jeremiah chapter 30 verse 14. All thy lovers have forgotten thee, they seek thee not, for I have wounded thee with the wound of an enemy, with the chastisement of a cruel one, for the multitude of thine iniquity, because thy sins were increased. Isaiah chapter 53 verse 2 is referring to someone as he, and the Christians are claiming that is JC. So who is he? Well, if you go back to chapter 52 verse 13, it's the first time that he is mentioned. Isaiah chapter 52 verse 13. Behold, my servant shall deal prudently. He shall be exalted and extolled and be very high. So now we know that he is the Most High servant. But who is a servant? Is it JC? Well, if we go back to chapter 49 verse 3, it says, Isaiah chapter 49 verse 3, And said unto me, Thou art my servant, O Israel, in whom I will be glorified. And there we have it. It's not JC after all. It's the children of Israel or Jacob. But can we be sure? Let's see if Isaiah mentions his servant again. Isaiah chapter 41 verses 8 and 9. But thou, Israel, art my servant, Jacob, who I have chosen, the seed of Abraham my friend. Thou whom I have taken from the ends of the earth, and called thee from the chief men thereof, and said unto thee, Thou art my servant, I have chosen thee, and not cast thee away. Isaiah chapter 48 verse 20. Go ye forth of Babylon, flee ye from the Chaldeans, with a voice of singing declare ye, tell this, utter it even to the ends of the earth. Say ye, the Most High hath redeemed his servant Jacob. Isaiah chapter 45 verse 4. For Jacob my servant's sake, and Israel mine elect, I have called thee by thy name, I have surnamed thee, though thou hast not known me. Isaiah chapter 44 verse 1. Yet now hear, O Jacob my servant, and Israel whom I have chosen. Isaiah chapter 44 verse 2. Thus saith the Most High, who made you, who formed you in the womb, and will help you. Do not fear, O Jacob my servant, Jeshurun whom I have chosen. Isaiah chapter 44 verse 21. Remember these, O Jacob and Israel, for thou art my servant. I have formed thee, thou art my servant, O Israel. Thou shalt not be forgotten of me. Isaiah chapter 49 verses 3 to 6. And said unto me, Thou art my servant, O Israel, in whom I will be glorified. And now saith the Most High that formed me from the womb to be his servant, to bring Jacob again to him. Though Israel be not gathered, yet I shall be glorious in the eyes of the Most High, and my Creator shall be my strength. And he said, It is a light thing that thou shouldest be my servant, to raise up the tribes of Jacob, and to restore the preserved of Israel. I will also give thee for a light to the Gentiles, that thou mayest be my salvation unto the end of the earth. So it's quite clear that Isaiah chapter 53 verses 2 to 9 are not about JC. They're speaking about the children of Israel. But beyond these verses, it continues to refer to He. Isaiah chapter 53 verse 10. Yet it pleased the Most High to bruise him. He hath put him to grief. When thou shalt make his soul an offering for sin, he shall see his seed. He shall prolong his days, and the pleasure of the Most High shall prosper in his hand. So what seed did JC have? And if I remember correctly, JC died around about 33, didn't he? Is that what the Most High means by prolonging his days? I mean, the Most High prolonged the days of Hezekiah 15 years. So if this is indeed a prophecy, then the Most High failed to deliver on his promises, and he did not prolong the life of JC. So did the Most High lie? Isaiah chapter 53 is talking about the children of Israel and has got nothing to do with JC. And now we can move on to Proverbs chapter 8 verses 23 and verse 27. Proverbs chapter 8 verse 23. I was set up from everlasting, from the beginning, or ever the earth was. Proverbs chapter 8 verse 27. When he prepared the heavens, I was there. So the contention of the Christians is the I in these verses is JC. Well, first of all, what are Proverbs? Well, they are the wisdom of Solomon, the wise sayings of Solomon. How did I know that? Proverbs chapter 1 verse 1. The Proverbs of Solomon, the son of David, king of Israel. So this is Solomon speaking, giving advice as a father to a son or a teacher to a student. But in chapter 7, he starts talking about wisdom itself, and he personifies it as a woman, just like some writers personify the sea as a woman. Proverbs chapter 7. Say unto wisdom, thou art my sister, and call understanding thy kinswoman. And then later he switches perspective and begins speaking of wisdom in the first person. Proverbs chapter 8 verse 12. I, wisdom, dwell with prudence, and find out knowledge of witty inventions. Solomon continues to refer to wisdom in the first person until chapter 9, where he reverts to speaking of her, wisdom, in the second person. Proverbs chapter 9 verse 1. Wisdom hath builded her house, she hath hewn out her 7 pillars. So what Solomon is saying is that the Most High acquired her, that's wisdom, before all else, and through her he gave order to chaos, and that seeking her is the goal of the righteous life. It's not prophecy, not referring to anyone in the future, and it has absolutely nothing to do with JC. It's just another Old Testament verse taken out of context to support a pagan demigod. So another verse that's pointed out by the Christians is Micah chapter 5 verse 2. So, Micah chapter 5 verse 2. But thou, Bethlehem Ephratah, though thou be little among the thousands of Judah, yet out of thee shall come forth unto me, that is to be ruler in Israel, whose goings forth have been from of old, from everlasting. Well, again, this sounds very JC-like, coming from Bethlehem and, becoming ruler in Israel, that sort of thing. But in actual fact, it's talking about David. How do we know? 1 Samuel chapter 17, verse 12. Now David was the son of the Ephrathite of Bethlehem, Judah, whose name was Jesse, and he had 8 sons. And the man went among men for an old man in the days of Saul. Now I'm going to take a look at Psalms chapter 22, verses 1, 15 to 16, and 18. Psalms chapter 22, verse 1. my God, why hast thou forsaken me? Why art thou so far from helping me, and from the words of my roaring? Again, this sounds very JC-like. These were supposedly the words he spoke from the cross to himself, but didn't answer himself and didn't help himself. So let's leave this one to one side, and we'll deal with the whole of chapter 22 together. Psalms chapter 22, verses 15 to 18. My strength is dried up like a potsherd, and my tongue cleaveth to my jaws. And thou hast brought me into the dust of death. For dogs have compassed me, and the assembly of the wicked have enclosed me. They pierced my hands and my feet. I may tell all my bones. They look and stare upon me. They part my garments among them, and cast lots upon my vesture. The word that sounds all JC-like is the word pierced, as in, they pierced my hands and feet. And that word in Hebrew is kara. That's Strong's number 3738. And it means digging, gouging, binding, tying up, or surrounding. But in the Tanakh, it's the word ari. That's H738. So let's go to H738 and see what it says. And yeah, it actually says lion. But if we go and take a look at all the places where this word is used, what do we find? Psalms 22 verse 16. This reference has been altered so that you would think it was about JC. So the verse could read more like lions they maul my hands and feet. Psalm 22, like all other psalms, is a prayer, and prayers follow the same pattern. A description of the problem, that's Psalms chapter 22 verses 1 to 18. A plea to the Most High for help, that's 19 to 21. And then a declaration of gratitude, and what the one praying will do if the prayer is answered. That's chapters 22 to 31. It's a prayer, not a prophecy. And still in Psalms, we go to Psalms 110 and 1. Psalms chapter 110, verse 1. The Most High said unto my Lord, sit thou at my right hand, until I make thine enemies thy footstool. The Christians like to think that this is David speaking about JC. But if you read Psalms chapter 72, verse 20, it says at that point, Psalms chapter 72, verse 20, the prayers of David, the son of Jesse, are ended. So, all subsequent psalms were not written by David, but most likely one of his singers, such as Asaph. So let's paraphrase this from Asaph's point of view. The Most High said unto my Lord David, sit thou at my right hand, until I make yours, David's, enemies your footstool. And now we come to the jewel in the Christian crown, Daniel 9:25. Daniel chapter 9 verses 25 and 26. Know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the commandment to restore and to build Jerusalem unto the Messiah the Prince shall be 7 weeks, and 62 weeks the street shall be built again, and the wall even in troubled times. And after 62 weeks shall the Messiah be cut off, but not for himself, and the people of the prince that shall come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary, and the end thereof shall be with a flood, and unto the end of the war desolations are determined. So let's see what the Christians say about this prophecy. This is Zen Garcia.
The prophet Daniel lived more than 500 years before the birth of Jesus. Nevertheless, Jehovah revealed to Daniel information that would make it possible to pinpoint the time when Jesus would be anointed or appointed as the Messiah or Christ. Daniel was told, you should know and understand that from the issuing of the word to restore and rebuild Jerusalem until Messiah, the leader, there will be 7 weeks, also 62 weeks. So this is giving you a specific time. And we know that the rebuilding of Jerusalem, that was after Nebuchadnezzar's dispensation, diaspora of the Hebrew people for the 70 years, and then Cyrus and Darius allowed them to return to the Holy Land and funded the rebuilding of the temple. So that's what it's speaking about. And so if you break down the math on that, it says, to determine the time of the Messiah's arrival, first we need to learn the starting point of the period leading to the Messiah. According to the prophecy, it is from the issuing of the word to restore and to build Jerusalem. When did this issuing of the word take place? According to the Bible writer Nehemiah, the word to rebuild the walls around Jerusalem was issued in the 20th year of King Artaxerxes. That's Nehemiah chapter 2, verse 1 and 5 through 8. Historians confirm that the year 474 BCE was Artaxerxes' first full year as ruler. Therefore, the 20th year of his rule was 455 BCE. Now we have the starting point for Daniel's messianic prophecy. That is 455 BCE. Daniel indicates how long the time period leading to the arrival of the Messiah, the leader, would last. The prophecy mentions 7 weeks, also 62 weeks, a total of 69 weeks. How long is this period of time? Several Bible translations note that these are not weeks of 7 days, but weeks of years. That is, each week represents 7 years. This concept of weeks of years or 7-year units was familiar to Jews of ancient times. For instance, they observed a Sabbath year every 7th year. Therefore, the prophetic 69 weeks amount to 69 units of 7 years each, or a total of 483 years. Now, all we must do is count. If we count from 455 BCE, a period of 483 years takes us to the year 29 CE. That was exactly the year when Jesus was baptized and became the Messiah. Is that not a remarkable fulfillment of Bible prophecy?
The 70 years prophesied by Jeremiah began in 606 BC, when the southern kingdom were taken into captivity in Babylon. But when the kingdom fell to the Medes and the Persians, Daniel was confused, as he saw that the 70 years had not expired in 538 BC. The angel Gabriel told Daniel that there were still 70 weeks to go. Daniel 9:24. 70 weeks are determined upon thy people and upon thy holy city, to finish the transgression, and to make an end of sins, and to make a reconciliation for iniquity, and to bring in the everlasting righteousness, and to seal up the vision and the prophecy, and to anoint the most holy. Then the angel gave Daniel a timeline for the 70 weeks. Daniel 9:25. Know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the commandment to restore and to build Jerusalem unto the Messiah the Prince shall be 7 weeks, and 62 weeks the street shall be built again, and the wall, even in troubled times. So in 7 weeks there would be a commandment for the Messiah, the Prince of Jerusalem, to rebuild the temple. 2 Chronicles chapter 36, verses 22 to 23. Now in the first year of Cyrus, king of Persia, that the word of the Most High, spoken by the mouth of Jeremiah, might be accomplished, the Most High stirred up the spirit of Cyrus, king of Persia, that he made a proclamation throughout all his kingdom, and put it also in writing, saying, Thus saith Cyrus, king of Persia, all the kingdoms of the earth hath the Most High of heaven given me, and he hath charged me to build him an house in Jerusalem, which is in Judah. Who is there among you of all his people? The Most High be with him, and let him go up. Isaiah chapter 44, verse 28. That saith of Cyrus, He is my shepherd, and shall perform all of my pleasure, even saying to Jerusalem, Thou shalt be built, and to the temple thy foundation shall be laid. Isaiah chapter 45, verse 1. Thus saith the Lord to his anointed, to Cyrus. Wait, what? Did the Most High just call King Cyrus his anointed? I think we'd better check which word that is. Gasp! Shock! Horror! It's Mashiach. That means the Most High called King Cyrus his Messiah. This is an example of the translators picking and choosing whether to translate the word Mashiach into anointed or transliterate it into the made-up word Messiah. And in this case, the Christian translators could not have the text call King Cyrus the Messiah. Anyway, back to Isaiah. Isaiah chapter 45 verse 1. Thus saith the Lord to his anointed, to Cyrus, whose right hand I have holden to subdue nations before him. And I will loose the loins of kings to open before him the two-leaved gates, and the gates will not be shut. I will go before thee, and make the crooked places straight. I will break in pieces the gates of brass, and cut in sunder the bars of iron. And I will give thee the treasures of darkness, the hidden riches of the secret places, that thou mayest know that I, the Most High, which call thee by thy name, am the power of Israel. For Jacob my servant's sake, and Israel my elect, I have called thee by thy name, I have surnamed thee, though thou hast not known me. This is where the Most High is playing chess with the characters of the Old Testament. In Isaiah, he's prophesying the rise of King Cyrus, and we see him making Cyrus his Messiah, his anointed one, prosperous, so that Cyrus can be the agent that returns the Israelites back to Jerusalem. Ezra chapter 1 verse 1. Now in the first year of Cyrus king of Persia, that the word of the Most High by the mouth of Jeremiah might be fulfilled, the Most High stirred up the spirit of Cyrus king of Persia, that he made a proclamation throughout all his kingdom, and also put it in writing, saying, Thus saith Cyrus king of Persia, The Most High of heaven hath given me all the kingdoms of the earth, and hath charged me to build him an house in Jerusalem, which is in Judah. Who is there among you of all his people? His Creator be with him. And let him go up to Jerusalem, which is in Judah, and build the house of the Most High of Israel. He is the Most High, which is in Jerusalem. And whosoever remaineth in any place where he sojourneth, let the men of his place help him with silver and with gold, and with goods and with beasts, beside the freewill offering to the house of the Most High that is in Jerusalem. So not only did Cyrus make a proclamation to send the Israelites back to their land to rebuild the temple, he also commanded the people who lived around about them to give them gold, silver and wealth, which seems to be a recurring theme when the Israelites leave slavery. They do so with great wealth. Ezra chapter 1 verses 7 to 8. Also Cyrus the king brought forth the vessels of the house of the Most High, which Nebuchadnezzar had brought forth out of Jerusalem, and had put them in the house of his gods. Even those did Cyrus king of Persia bring forth, by the hand of Mithridates the treasurer, and numbered them unto Sheshbazzar, the prince of Judah. Sheshbazzar was the slave name of Zerubbabel, the anointed prince of Judah. It's telling you that Cyrus brought out all the stolen treasures that were in the temple originally, that were taken by Nebuchadnezzar, and they were given to Zerubbabel to put back into the restored temple. Ezra chapter 2 verses 1 and 2. Now these are the children of the province that went up out of captivity, of those that had been carried away, whom Nebuchadnezzar the king of Babylon had carried away into Babylon, and came again into Jerusalem and Judah, every one unto his city, which came of Zerubbabel, Jeshua, Nehemiah, Sariah, Reliah, Mordecai, Bilshan, Mizpah, Bigvai, Rehum, and Baanah, the number of the men of the people of Israel. So Daniel is talking about Zerubbabel, the Messiah, Messiah means anointed. Zerubbabel was the anointed prince of Judah, not JC. Ezra chapter 2 verse 64. The whole congregation together was 42,303 score. The remnant that returned with Zerubbabel, prophesied by Isaiah's son, Shear-jashub, a remnant shall return. Daniel chapter 9 verse 26. And after 62 weeks shall Messiah be cut off, but not for himself. And the people of the prince that shall come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary, and the end thereof shall be with a flood, and unto the end of the war desolations are determined. In Ezra chapter 4, it tells how the enemies of Judah petitioned Artaxerxes to stop the building work in 535 BC, the 3rd year of King Cyrus. Ezra chapter 4 verse 21. Give ye now commandment to cause these men to cease, and that this city be not builded, until another commandment shall be given from me. So, exactly 62 weeks after the return to Jerusalem, in the 3rd year of King Cyrus, the building work was cut off. So the Christians who point to Daniel chapter 9 and claim it is a prophetic timeline of the activities of JC are in error. They have added to the scriptures and decided that wherever it says weeks, it doesn't mean 7 days, but a week of years, despite the fact that it's clearly talking about a timeline for the return of Judah to Jerusalem and the rebuilding and the subsequent cutting short of the building work. It's actually talking about another Messiah, which is Zerubbabel, going back to the land and rebuilding the temple. And all that occurred right on schedule. These are just a few of the supposed prophecies of the New Testament Messiah. And I keep using the phrase New Testament Messiah because it's an entirely different entity to the Mashiach or Messiahs described in the so-called Old Testament. They were just people who were anointed to perform a task for the Most High. But the New Testament Messiah is supposedly a saviour, an avenger, high priest, king, the immaculately conceived Son of the Most High himself, and a human sacrifice who died for everyone's sins. All of which contradicts the express word of the Most High. The Most High promises that he will always let us know what he's going to do. Amos chapter 3 verse 7. Surely the Most High will do nothing, but he revealeth his secret unto his servants the prophets. So why isn't the New Testament Messiah clearly revealed by name in the Book of Remembrance? After all, King Cyrus was prophesied by name 200 years before he was born. So why isn't the most significant event in history not spelled out in this book? Is the New Testament Messiah less important than King Cyrus? Well, a Christian attempted to answer this question for me by saying that his name had to be kept secret so his enemies wouldn't know about his coming. Now, apart from having no scriptural basis whatsoever, it's an interesting theory with just 5 tiny little flaws. Joshua son of Nun, Joshua the Beth-Shemite, Joshua the son of Josedek, Jesus the son of Sirach, and Jesus the father of Sirach. This was no secret name. So how can anyone believe this demigod story? I mean, in Mark chapter 11 verses 12 to 25, it tells how JC was hungry and approached a fig tree, only to find out it had no figs because it was out of season. So he cursed it and it withered away. So if JC was the Most High, why didn't he know that the figs weren't in season? Why did he curse a perfectly good fig tree for doing exactly what it was designed to do and only bear figs in its season? And if JC could wither a tree with a curse, why didn't he just command it to bear fruit? None of it is believable. In fact, in order to believe the New Testament at all, it means you also have to believe in the following. that the Most High lied when he said, "Thou shalt not have any other gods before me," and that he actually meant to say, "except Jesus." That the Most High lied when he said that no man can die for the sins of another. That the Most High lied when he said that he is the only Saviour. Not once, but 6 times. That the Most High lied when he says he does not do anything unless he reveals it to his prophets. That the Most High lied when he said that human sacrifice was an abomination. That the Most High lied when he says he doesn't change. Think about it. If your New Testament Messiah died for your sins, then why will there be a judgment of his people when the Most High comes? Also, in Deuteronomy chapter 6 verses 13 and 14 it says, "Thou shalt fear the Most High and serve him. Thou shalt swear by his name. Ye shall not go after other gods of the people which are round about you." Yet people say the words Yahweh Bahashem Yahweh Shai, which means the Most High in the name of JC. I have a British passport, and on the first page it says, "Her Britannic Majesty's Secretary of State requests and requires in the name of Her Majesty all those it may concern." Now in that sentence, the one that has the authority is the Queen and not her Secretary of State. The first individual is subordinate to the second. So when the Hebrew says Yahweh Bahashem Yahweh Shai, they are placing the Most High in a subordinate position and subject to the authority of JC, which is deeply blasphemous and breaks the first commandment every time it's uttered. Otherwise, the Most High lied again when he said that he does not share his glory with another. Brothers and sisters, you're being fooled. You were born into this religion. Think about it. If you'd been born in India, then you'd be a Hindu. Or in Iran, you'd be a Muslim. And had your parents taken you to the temple or mosque every week, week in, week out, then you'd be clinging on to Ganesha, the blue elephant god, or Allah, the Ishmaelite god now. Your parents indoctrinated you because they themselves were indoctrinated by their parents, and so on and so on. But if you keep going back, you'll eventually end up at a man who is forced into accepting the New Testament God of the oppressors. He was whipped and beaten half to death and terrified by the horrific tortures inflicted upon the slaves that refused to accept it. During the Spanish and Portuguese Inquisition, hundreds of thousands of people who looked just like you suffered cruel, sadistic torture before being burned alive at the stake, because they'd rather endure the pain and mutilation and death than bow to this new God. How ashamed they would be to see their descendants so zealously reject the Most High, as they ignore the 4th commandment and march into pagan churches on the day of the sun god, and break the 1st and 2nd commandments, by worshipping idols of wood and stone, and putting this New Testament Messiah before the Most High. Is it any wonder that this captivity has lasted 400 years, when the Most High's people continue to do the very thing that caused them to be punished in the first place? I know this seems like a difficult thing to do. After all, the pastor that has become obscenely rich from your tithes has filled your head with images of hell and damnation and lakes of fire if you don't continue to believe. But tell me, why hasn't the New Testament Messiah helped any of us at any time over the last 400 years? Are we not still being gunned down in the streets by police? Are we not still being railroaded into prison by a justice system rigged against us? Are we not still being targeted by race-specific diseases and preyed upon by pharmaceutical corporations? Are we not still having police called on us for living our lives by white people who are hoping to see another police execution of a dark-skinned man? If you read the Book of Remembrance without this pagan idol in your heart, you'd understand why we've been in the position we're in for 399 years and what we need to be doing today. The earth has been given into the hand of the wicked, and the wicked rule of Esau began around 1492 with the Renaissance, the rebirth of white rule in Europe. Esau's blessing was that he was to live in the best places in the world and live deliciously, but he would gain everything by the sword, rampaging across the earth for 500 years, killing, maiming, torturing, raping, lying and stealing. Look what's happened to the earth under the rule of the wicked. Massive deforestation, animals going extinct, hundreds of thousands of birds falling out the skies, millions of dead fish washing up on the shore, lush farmland being turned to desert, water poisoned, air poisoned, the plant life genetically modified, humanity twisted and perverted. But Esau's blessing was only a temporary one. It was Jacob who got the real blessing, the real inheritance. And so Esau's world is coming to an end, and it can't come fast enough. As much as I hate to quote the fraudulent New Testament, one verse seems to fit this situation exactly. Matthew chapter 24, verse 22. And except those days be shortened, there should be no flesh be saved, but for the elect's sake, those days shall be shortened. And they have been. Esau's Roman Empire, the Fourth Reich, the fourth beast, did not get 1,000 years of rule. The earth and the people on it could not endure another 500 years of constant war, bloodshed, perversion, pollution, hatred, greed and wanton destruction. So we see their world crumbling. And now the world is waiting for Judah to awaken. The whole earth is holding its breath, waiting for you to rise up and take your rightful place. Kwame Yisrrael. Kwame Yisrrael. Shalom.